when you're in danger. Just know the feeling that you have when you're in a haunted house.
We'll see it works. I don't know if this is gonna work. We're gonna try it. It's gonna do for tonight. Hello. How was everybody doing? Why is this people's notifications? Should be on that one. Oh, I see why. Come on, everybody, start talking. Say something. We know there's litards here. I mean, come on. No, you know, we could just go ahead and start it. The only thing that sucks is not having a, card a little different. But it is what it is.
Probably got you off if you told him to look. What's up, guys? Spenny. The human experience is a remarkable one because it is a spiritual experience as well. There are things in our lives we just can't explain. Like the feeling that you have when you're in danger. You just know it. The feeling that you have when you're in a haunted house. You just have an instinct when someone perhaps is lying to you or deceiving you. You just know they're not right. Everybody's already felt that. Call it whatever you want, a sixth sense. But it's there nonetheless. And we just know when we're being lied to. It's why everyone, I mean everyone, knows that we are not getting the full story on Jeffrey Epstein. And it creeps us out. And it's upsetting. Because you just know in your bones. Ladies and gentlemen, there's something else that we know in our bones. That we are being lied to about the JFK assassination. Now, we thought that we'd get full disclosure here, but ladies and gentlemen, we aren't getting full disclosure. The JFK documents were all released by the Trump administration. That's, by the way, untrue. There's lots of them that are still hidden at the CIA. We'll get to that in just a second. But let me read you in on something quite fascinating from Trump's first term.
Oh, come on. Seriously?
This is both a dashcam and an intelligent anti-theft system. It's the groundbreaking new product from Nexus Bay.
Very close friend of President Trump had this to say about why President Trump wouldn't release the JFK documents, the real ones. Listen.
2 weeks before, or a week before he's leaving office, he wanted to run past me the names of people he was going to pardon and sentences he was going to commute. He wanted my opinion on them. Some of them I knew. I said, "How you doing?" He said, "Not too well," and he went off into a tangent about what he thought happened with the election. I said, "You know, you made a promise to the public many times and to me privately that you haven't kept." What? I'll take care of it right now. I said, "You promised you would release the records of the JFK assassination." He said to me, "Judge, if they showed you what they showed me, you wouldn't have released it either. And I said, who's they and what did they show you? And then he said, Judge, someday when we're on the phone, and then he raised his voice, and there aren't 15 people listening to the phone call, back to a normal voice, I'll tell you.
Goodness gracious. And Trump so much that they were able to effectively use it as some sort of blackmail against Donald Trump. Donald Trump knows who killed JFK, and it scared him. Does that seem reflective in the JFK documents that we all saw? There are some interesting things in those documents, however. One of them was that multiple pages of the JFK files found the CIA demanding any mentions of Israel be redacted. You can see here, 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 and here. I'll show you the documents. Go look them up for yourself. See if you come to the same conclusion. The unredacted JFK files reveals that CIA counterintelligence chief James Angleton secretly helped Israel obtain a nuclear weapon, defying John F. Kennedy's wishes. The documents confirmed the atomic technology and plutonium were transferred through intermediaries, with Angleton admitting to meeting with Israeli officials. He warned about the need for secrecy, fearing the fallout with the White House if it became public. Again, feel free to look the documents up yourself. You can go see. Now, this is hardly news. We know as a absolute matter of fact that JFK did not want Israel to have the nuclear bomb. Remember, only 2 or 3 countries at the time had a nuclear weapon, and Israel was like a country that's 2 days old. Well, how the hell are they supposed to be handling atomic energy, right? Obviously. How Israel deceived the U.S. and built the bomb. Israel effectively was able to lie, cheat, and steal its way into having a nuclear weapon. Israel's first leader, David Ben-Gurion, initiated Israel's nuclear project in the mid to late 1950s, establishing Israel's nuclear complex at Dioma during the period when only three countries had nuclear weapons. They assembled their first nuclear devices a decade later. Against stiff U.S. opposition led by JFK, Israeli leaders were determined to reach their goals. They lied to the U.S. They effectively, according to a lot of documents, they set up fake nuclear reactors for U.S. inspectors. They had a secret, off-the-books nuclear program. JFK tapped Jewish scientists to prevent Israeli nuclear program, documents showed. But they refused to let him inspect their nuclear facilities. This is what the documents show. President Kennedy gave Israel strong warning about his nuclear reactor. President Kennedy was very angry that Ben-Gurion, as I wrote, Mr. Ben-Gurion's government commitment and support of Israel could be seriously jeopardized if we thought that they were able to potentially maintain and attain a nuclear weapon. So it's like straight up saying that Kennedy's telegram to the leader of Israel saying, you better not be making a nuclear weapon. Damn it, I swear to you, I will stop supporting the state of Israel, which of course at that time was so nascent. It was, I used like 10 aid and at the brink of collapse many times. He said, we will pull the plug if we think that you're trying to develop a nuclear device. Standoff with the U.S. almost blew up Israel's nuclear program. Kennedy's ultimatum, Ben-Gurion's sick reply, and a fiasco of nuclear inspection where they built a fake nuclear plant to trick U.S. inspectors. It's incredible. Shed light on the diplomatic risk feared. How a standoff with the U.S. almost blew up Israel's nuclear program. Kennedy's ultimatum. Ladies and gentlemen, okay, so this is well documented. Here's what's not exactly well documented, but which has blown up my feed today. Marjorie Taylor Greene, Congresswoman from Georgia, says America's President JFK was assassinated for opposing Israel's nuclear program. Whoa. Is there any further context to this? Let's read, ladies and gentlemen. This is MTG responding to Mark Levin, who is is absolutely and totally warmongering right now, and it's just gross and detestable, quite frankly. I just don't like neocons. I just straight up, it's nothing personal. I hate neocons, right? And this is the response from MTG to a Mark Levin attack. This is sick and disturbing. Please read to the end. Mark, you have the exact same tone and language of the psychopaths who send me death threats every single day. You should be fired from Fox News. Shame on Fox if they condone this. Let me introduce you to my friend Jesus. He said, blessed are the peacemakers. They'll be called the children of God. Jesus the Messiah. Jesus the only one and only Son of God. Jesus was put to death on a Roman cross, died for our sins. Jesus will return one day, and those that did not recognize him will mourn. He will bring everlasting peace to the earth, and his kingdom will have no end. Jesus also says, pray for your enemies, so I'll do my best to pray for you. But I will be watchful. There was once a great president that the American people loved. They did love JFK a lot. He opposed Israel's nuclear program, and very publicly, and then he was assassinated. MTG making effectively a very non-veiled assassination posit towards Levin here, saying that she worries that President Trump may well be assassinated. I mean, you have to follow through here on the logic for opposing Israel and Israel's wars right now, which Donald Trump does. And he's made that very, very clear today. I oppose war, including wars Israel rages. Should I feel that my life is in danger now too? What about President Trump, who strongly rebuked Israel this morning and continuing to attack Iran? This is the point that she's making. I guess tacitly saying that Israel, at the very least, had a hand in the killing of JFK. This, of course, made big-time news. MTG suggests link between JFK's assassination and his opposition to the nuclear program. I mean, I don't know. But look, what do you want from me? These are the files themselves. This is the CIA helping Israel get the bomb behind the back of JFK. This has not made the world a safer place. This has made the world a much less safe place. It's been horrible, quite frankly, for the region. Destabilized everything. Multiple pages of JFK files found. CIA requested the redactions or any mentions of Israel. Weird. Tucker Carlson says that the JFK files are being blocked by a senior politician. The real JFK files are currently being blocked from their release. Tucker Carlson suggests a force is acting upon the Trump administration to prevent the release of the JFK and Epstein files. Why don't we listen to RFK, ladies and gentlemen? RFK, obviously, one of the single most affected men on earth to the assassination of JFK, talking about what really happened when President Trump wanted to release the files.
Astonished that Trump didn't declassify them because he promised to during the campaign.
That was Mike Pompeo who did that.
Yeah, and that I talked to President Trump for the first time about that this week. And
what did he say?
He said that Mike Pompeo begged him to, and I don't think I'm telling tales out of school here.
No,
I think he told the same thing to you.
That's true.
But he said Mike Pompeo called him and said this would be a catastrophe to release these. You need to not do it.
Would be a catastrophe. Why? You know, it's like the same thing that you always say, right? When you're guilty, you act guilty. Again, it's in your bones. You know when someone's guilty. You can see it. Sweat, perspiration. That's why lie detectors work. There's something, the autonomic nervous system, there's something that happens that kicks in. It changes you. You feel it. You know it. People are acting guilty here. I'm not saying I have any
Jamie, how you doing?
further evidence. I can just present to you what's publicly available. But I'm saying that there's people who had major motivations for JFK to die. Obviously, Lyndon Baines Johnson was probably chiefly among them, but there were quite a few. And why the extreme cover-up? Why the stress? Why the panic? Why the freakouts here? Why are there so many people that are saying, either it's Judge Napolitano or it's RFK himself saying, if you release the true reason why who truly killed JFK, then it's all over, right? Then it'll all be over. Well, does that match the release we got? Of course not. Someone's hiding something. Someone's acting guilty. They sure as hell are acting guilty. We'll see if it plays out. Maybe MTG knows more than we do. We don't know. But, ladies and gentlemen, those are the questions. Hopefully, someday, we'll get the answers.
It don't look
Don't
like
hold
we
your
should
breath.
be trusting Israel.
It's your boy Benny. Like, share, and subscribe for more truth, or at least interesting.
It doesn't look like we should be trusting Israel. Oh yeah, I heard about that. You're gonna go to that one, right? I heard about that. Yes, we do. But it doesn't seem. I don't know. Just something doesn't. Definitely now we can't be trusting Israel. Something's going on. I mean, what do you think, Jericho? I know Jericho has his point of view. I understand before you always said Israel is not the same. I know there's a lot of American people today that stand with Israel, but I really like to know the truth there, what's really going on here. I mean, I still...
Joining us now is the Vice President of the United States, J.D. Vance. Mr. Vice President, thank
Oh,
you for
that's
taking
good.
the time.
I'm glad you're gone. Let's turn this up here.
Achieved yesterday. Walk our audience through the significance and the profundity and your role in helping it.
Yes. Come on.
Achieve peace between Israel and Iran.
Well, thanks so much, Charlie, for having me. It's good to talk with you. And really all credit goes to the president here. I mean, he had a very clear goal in mind. He wanted to destroy the Iranian nuclear program. He did that militarily. Of course, we tried to do it diplomatically, but the Iranians were not willing to play ball. But he also wanted us to be in a very narrow, very defined operation where once we solved the problem, he wanted to get the hell out and not have to deal with the Middle East anymore. And I think that's what you saw here is you saw bold, decisive action, but you also saw a willingness to sort of press the brakes on both the Iranians and the Israelis. You know, what happened, I think it was very interesting. I came into the Oval Office on Monday morning, and we had just received calls from both the Israelis, but also from the Iranians. And from the Israelis, they were basically saying, look, we're exhausted. We don't want to do this anymore. And we've achieved our military objectives. They were quite successful, as you know, but they didn't want to keep on going. And I think from the Iranians, they were saying, well, we're going to do this counterattack, but it's going to be largely symbolic. This is where we're going to strike. They basically telegraphed exactly what they were going to do so that we could maximize our ability to save the lives and the health of our troops. And so what the president basically said is, let's figure out what the Iranians are actually doing. Let's obviously do everything that we can to save our troops. And then after the attack, let's reconvene and see where we are. The president kind of gathered up the senior team and said, look, the Iranians clearly didn't mean to kill anybody because they told us exactly where they were going to attack. The Israelis are telling us they've achieved their objectives and they don't want to do a long, protracted war. Let's go and get a ceasefire done. And then 3 hours later, that's exactly what we had accomplished. And hilariously, we were working on confirming and coordinating the details of this as I was on the way to do an interview with Brett Baer. And then I think the president got this over the finish line literally while I was on air. And then it was read to me right before we actually started recording the interview. So a really big day for America, a really big day, I think, for Israel and Iran, but just a big day for world peace, Charlie. I mean, I can't emphasize how big of a deal it is that we took the Iranian nuclear program, we destroyed it without losing a single American life and without getting the United States involved in some protracted Middle Eastern conflict. It's kind of a win-win-win all around.
And so, Mr. Vice President, I've known the president for about 10 years. I have never seen him this mad publicly, where he dropped basically the F-bomb heard around the world at both Israel and Iran. What do you think led to that? He wanted the ceasefire so badly. He wants peace. His driving force is peace, not war, which is such a sea change versus the prior Republican Party. Can you comment on President Trump this morning as he was demanding an end to all conflict, and it worked? Please.
Yeah, so, I mean, look, ceasefires are always a little bit of mess, Charlie, and we don't even know fully exactly what happened. I mean, our understanding is that you know, the Israelis obviously tried to ramp up their campaign towards the very end. The Iranians took a lot of shots at the Israelis at the very end. There's some concerns here because, even after the senior leaders agree to a ceasefire, it takes some time for that message to get down to the commanders in the field. Even though if the leadership of Iran, for example, says, yes, okay, we'll stop shooting, it's totally possible that there's a guy they can't reach who doesn't realize that. And so it's not even clear totally what happened, but there appears to be one errant rocket that the Israelis perceived was fired at them. It did not land. It did not do any damage. This was the very last rocket the Iranian shot. And then it seemed like the Israelis were going to do this massive response. And the president, you saw this morning, had just been, and I called him 5 minutes before this press conference and we talked about it. And I think the president was just like, this is ridiculous. Totally. These guys are exhausted. Both of them want to stop fighting. This stupid tit for tat is unacceptable. And I'm just going to go out there and I'm going to make it very clear to each party that this needs to stop. And obviously, it's an amazing thing to have an American president who just goes out there and says, this is what's in America's best interest. This is what's smart. The parties should choose the smart path and not the dumb path. And he said it so forcefully that I actually think it meaningfully changed the trajectory of this morning, Charlie. I mean, just take you through my own psychology. At around 6:30 this morning, which is, I think, right around the time the president was going out, I was worried that this ceasefire would fall apart. It was hard won. There was a lot of background that went into it. You go to bed, you think things are fine, you wake up and realize that they're not. And I really thought around 6:30 this morning the whole thing might fall apart. The president got it back on track as only he can do. It was really amazing.
Extraordinary. Last night there were a lot of doomers, Mr. Vice President. There were a lot of doomers.
Yes, there were.
And they were like, oh, this thing's falling apart, and Persia's launching rockets, and it's past this. And I honestly, I turned my phone off at 1 a.m. Eastern. I said, I'm done. I said, I'm just going to trust the Lord and trust Trump, who I think has the hand of God on him to settle this thing. So, Mr. Vice President, I want to ask you the complexity of being able to have no nuclear program for Iran, to have no troops on the ground, no nation building, and no U.S. troops. I mean, that's pitching a perfect game. I hope everyone in the audience understands how unique and rare this is. Mr. Vice President, can you add more detail to that? Because to have all those no's, no troops on the ground, no permanent war, no quagmire, no U.S. troops dead, and no nukes for Iran, that is a dream.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. It really is a dream, Charlie. And I think you and I are similar age. We grew up in the same generation. I think a lot of people in our generation assume that every single time we do anything in the Middle East that is necessarily going to lead to some protracted quagmire. Totally. Yes, the president deserves great credit for destroying the nuclear program and pressing the reset on the Iranian nuke program, but I actually think he pressed the reset button on a generation of failed American foreign policy. He basically said it is actually possible for Americans to go and do important things in the American interest and then to get out.
Hold that thought.
And Mr. that is something that's really profound.
We'll be back in 10 seconds. Hold that thought. We'll be right back. Yep. Okay, so Mr. Vice President, sorry, we had a radio break. Mr. Vice President, continue that thought here, though.
Yeah.
And comment further. Sorry to cut you off. But our generation, understandably, has a ton of skepticism. We think of Middle East, long, expensive, we're war weary, and we're demonstrating under the MAGA doctrine, actually, there's a third way.
That's exactly right, Charlie. And you, of course, have heard some of the president's supporters and even the president himself, me, have been attacked as isolationists. And then you had people sort of attacking us and saying that we were going to get involved in another forever war. And what I saw privately and publicly was a president who said, what do we need to do to accomplish America's interests? Let's go and do it, and then let's get out. And that basic idea that you can go and do great things, the American military is incredibly powerful. I mean, what these B-2 bombers accomplished, Charlie, is really extraordinary. They flew halfway, 12 of them, on ventilation shafts that were literally the size of a washing machine, and then got out without ever landing. They never landed the entire mission. They did aerial refueling. It's an amazing, testament to American military power. But the president used that military power to accomplish something that mattered to the American people. He's been saying it for 10 years. We can't let Iran get a nuclear weapon. He accomplished it And now he's moving on, I think, to build more peace and more prosperity all across the Middle East. I think he showed the Iranians that they're not nearly as tough as they might think that they are. I think that he showed the Israelis that we're willing to use American power for our interests, but we're not going to get involved in another Middle East quagmire. And I think that combined message is going to hopefully lead to a period of great peace and prosperity in the Middle East, which of course will be great for the United States. That'll mean, more investment, more prosperity, more people building businesses in the Middle East is great for America. More war is terrible for America, and the president threaded the needle perfectly.
One final question. I know I have to let you go. Mr. Vice President, a lot of the base now is saying we need domestic wins, domestic. And by the way, we had to do this whole Iran-Israel thing, the way the president handled it. What are the top domestic priorities for this administration? Mass deportations, no tax on tips. Walk us through the marching orders for this audience so that we can really put the thrust and the energy and the velocity here domestically.
Yeah, of course, we have our big legislative priority, which is no taxes on tips, no taxes on overtime, but also a massive amount of funding for the border wall and for other immigration enforcement. It's impossible, I think, really to do mass deportations unless you get some more money into Border Patrol, resources that have been really depleted under the Biden administration and not reinvested in our own security. As you know, Charlie, I think the most important domestic policy issue, the reason why Donald J. Trump is the 47th president of the United States, is the need to, one, stop the mass invasion, and two, deport the people who were let in during Biden's mass invasion. The president's very committed to that, and the number that really matters, Charlie, is net migration numbers.
Totally.
If you look,
that's right.
For the first time in a very long time, we have fewer people coming into the country than we are getting out of the country. That shows that we've stopped the flow of illegal immigration, and we're starting the deportations. And that, to me, is the most important thing. It's the metric by which we'll be judged. Obviously, you've seen the courts try to stop this stuff, but we're starting to get enough wins in courts that I think if we get the big, beautiful bill passed, you're going to see an accelerating approach to deportations as we implement that most important part of the agenda.
I love it. Mr. Vice President, congratulations on playing a role in history. We have your back. Keep up the great work. Thank you so much.
Charlie, thanks, man. Take care.
There's a lot of talk about what's happening in Israel right now. Hostages being released, terrorists resurfacing, Gaza plans, and so on. But there's one thing we tend to overlook: the people of Israel. The war has taken a huge physical and emotional toll on the Jewish people. And that's why I want you to know about the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews. And I want you to support the important work they do. IFCJ is on the ground throughout Israel, providing food and life-saving aid to the sick and elderly, even released hostages and their families. Join with me and visit ifcj.org/learn more. That's why we work so hard. And by the way, here at the Bitcoin.com studio, it's one of the reasons why we work so hard to get J.D. Vance as vice president. His prudence, his precision, his temperament, his understanding of all the issues. He truly is a thought leader for a generation. Now, whether he will be the next president or not, it's too early to do that. Look, I'm 100% behind him if that's what he decides to do. We have governing in front of us. We have to pass the big, beautiful bill. We have to get to mass deportations. What President Donald Trump pulled off in the Middle East is extraordinary, to say the least. It's extraordinary. It's breathtaking. J.D. Vance's ability to articulate the president's agenda is second to none. And understand, J.D. Vance is right in alignment with the president. He is about violent, precise, short action, but does not want long quagmires or continued conflicts. And he is a master-class communicator. As we are putting together our summer program, our Student Action Summit program, I don't think JD will be able to join for this one. Maybe, maybe not. But, he's got a lot of stuff going on. The summer is, by the way, a lot of times people joke around in government, summer doesn't happen a lot. This is like a rapid pace summer. You got wars, you got big, beautiful bill, you got taxes, you got border, you got deportations. And J.D. Vance represents the best of the future of our party. And just so everyone understands, we've taken a leadership role the last couple of weeks. We have not engaged in name calling, except that's not true. I did name call two people, Lindsey Graham and James Langford. That's true. I did name call Lindsey Graham and James Langford. Besides that, it's been very nasty online. If you haven't noticed, people hurling insults and all this stuff after each other. But I think that there is a moment of reconciliation. J.D. Vance was not a Trump supporter originally, and that was actually the argument I made to the president as to why I think J.D. Vance would make a great vice president. It shows that there can be reconciliation and that people can come on board. We want former people that weren't Trump supporters to become Trump supporters. I mean, look at that shot right there. That's Team America right there. That's Team Peace. That is Team Western Civilization. Secondly, I think it's a very, very important point that is lost on people, is that the vice president does a lot of diplomacy. Do you know that J.D. Vance was intimately involved in the peace settlement? Intimately involved with the peace settlement between Israel and Iran, working with the Qataris, the right-hand man. And what a difference it is from Mike Pence. Mike Pence right now would be beating the drums of war, saying that we need regime change. Privately. Publicly, he'd send out some statement that is just superficial and nonsensical.